Welcome. Thank you for coming. And I need to tell you, I have no idea how this is going to go. We're going to call this one How to Write a Youth Sermon, because we're supposed to be talking about the triumphant entry and Jesus weeping over Jerusalem. And I've known about this passage for about a week that we were going to do this one this Sunday, and I literally can't figure out what angle to take. So I'm going to do something unique this time. I'm going to invite you into the process. This is how you write a youth sermon. I'm being completely serious right now, so let's see how this goes. There's a quote by Dallas Willard in The Divine Conspiracy. In the introduction, he says this brilliant line, and he says, "Familiarity can breed unfamiliarity. Unfamiliarity can breed ignorance, and ignorance can breed contempt. If you think you know Jesus, you're going to start to become unfamiliar, and then that's going to lead you to more ignorance, and then outright just having contempt for Jesus." So I think the gist of this talk right now is about never assume you're familiar with Jesus, because you could head towards a dangerous path. Okay, so Here's what I was doing this week. I was literally making notes about what angle to take here. So I'm going to write them out. I think the first one was, Zechariah. Okay, Zechariah. Okay, so in this passage, Jesus does fulfill a prophecy of the Old Testament, but that's not the only angle, so maybe we should try another one. He's also, he weeps over Jerusalem, and that kind of makes him like a new Jeremiah, because Jeremiah was the prophet who weeps. Maybe, he's a king in this passage, okay, king, but he's a different kind of king because, he rides a servant donkey, not a war horse. So maybe we should take that angle with the youth. Talk about how Jesus, he's a servant, not a warrior, and how do we talk about that? There's inner tension, okay? Because during this triumphant entry, all the people are celebrating Jesus, and they're thankful that he's there, but it doesn't say that he's celebrating. And then it closes with him weeping. So that makes me think everyone around him was celebrating, but on the inside he had something else going on. Maybe we could talk about that difference. There's like an Exodus thing happening where in the Old Testament the Israelites get kicked out of Israel, and then there's the return back to Jerusalem. There's kind of a return from Exodus happening in this passage. I guess we could go old school. In the early church, they had 4 ways of reading the same passage. There's the literal. What's happening in this passage? Then they also had the allegorical. There's allegory, which says, maybe these are the characters, but maybe it's actually referencing these things over here. There's the moral, okay? Maybe we could try that. Maybe there's something ethical in this passage that we should talk about. Or maybe there's something heavenly. Let's call that the eschatological. Eschaton is the end, like the last things. Eschatological. Or there's Martin Luther. Okay, Martin Luther, he looked at all the Bible, and he didn't do the 4 thing, he did a 2 thing, which was law versus gospel. Okay, and that meant that he would read a passage like this, and he would look for what's the bad news in this passage, and then what's the good news. And you always do it in that order, because you always want to finish on good news, you don't want to finish on bad news. Okay. Leave that in the edit. Okay. We have a lot of angles we could take. Which one is the right one? All of them. All of them are the right angle. Because some of you might have already known one of these. Maybe you already knew about the servant donkey versus a war horse. Maybe you already knew that Jesus was like a new weeping Jeremiah. Maybe some of you already knew he's a king, or maybe some of you already knew the law versus gospel part. But the reality is that they're all the right angle. So I actually want to invite you into something. Yeah, I titled this How to Write a Youth Sermon because I didn't know which angle to take, because they're all good. And because we should never think we have the right angle on Jesus and therefore don't need to be curious anymore. If anything, I think a list like this makes us say, we should always be endlessly curious about Jesus. And that the moment you think you've got Jesus figured out is the moment he escapes you. Because it's not about us holding on to him, it's about him holding on to us. There's a very big difference there. Because the Bible is very much like a web page. And I mean that seriously. You know, when you look at a website or something, and then every so often a line is in blue, it means you can click it and go to a different link. The Bible is full of links to Zechariah, Jeremiah, kingly or Exodus motifs, to comments about what is a servant, to what does it mean to be human and have this internal tension between, I feel like crying, but everyone around me is happy. That's a part of the human experience, and Jesus is the most human person ever. I don't know how to finish this. I really don't. But maybe that's okay, because we shouldn't ever be finished learning about or from Jesus. Even during the most important week of what we think was his 1 or 3 year ministry, there's always something to learn, and that's because God is inherently mystery. And mystery is not unknowable. Mystery is endlessly knowable. And I've used this analogy with a few of you before, but the Bible is very much like a diamond. And when the light hits it, it refracts. You can see the diamond refract differently every time you turn it. And I would like to invite you this week, during Holy Week, don't assume that you're familiar with the life of Jesus, especially during Holy Week, because it may very well be that your familiarity can lead to unfamiliarity, and unfamiliarity to ignorance, and ignorance to contempt. And you do not want to contempt this week, because this week is endlessly knowable. Come and join us on this journey. You are all wonderful, delightful. I invite you to go check out any of these. But until next time, may grace and peace be with you. Bye.